this series of introductory videos to Johann Sebastian Bach's Christmas Oratorio. My name is Chris McGinley. My colleagues and I from the University of Minnesota have prepared these videos in the hopes of providing insights into the compositional process, structure, text, and musical meaning of this fascinating work. Some of you will have recognized the musical passage being played at the start of this video. It comes from the opening to the first section of the Christmas Oratorio, presented along with sections 2 and 3 by Minnesota Orchestra and Minnesota Chorale in December of 2017. I'll play a short portion of the introduction again. Try to capture the melody in your ear, along with the distinctive timpani solo. These will help us to make an important point about Bach's compositional ingenuity later on in this video. So, what is an oratorio? We tend to think of oratorios as concert-length works similar in style and form to operas. In fact, these associations arose when oratorio, once an art form intended purely for church settings, moved to the concert hall to fill gaps in the subscription series of opera houses who were forced to go dark during the season of Lent. To meet demand and fill the revenue gap, opera companies would commission works virtually identical to operas, complete with soloists playing dramatic roles and singing recitatives and arias, choruses playing the role of the crowd or otherwise commenting on the action, and orchestras supporting the vocal music and providing overtures and interludes. As long as the composers told sacred stories and the producers refrained from employing sets, costumes, or overt staging, these companies were able to continue business as usual. Handel's Messiah and Mendelssohn's Elijah are notable examples of this tradition. Bach's Christmas Oratorio bears many similarities to the format and works described earlier, with special twists that point to his particular style. At times, soloists play dramatic roles, such as an angel in Part 2 and King Herod in Part 4. A tenor plays the evangelist, who serves as a narrator in accordance with Bach's practice in his Passions. Bach gives these characters biblical texts from the Gospels of Luke and Matthew, while at other times, the soloists drop their dramatic roles and provide commentary or reflection using poetic texts written during Bach's lifetime. Whether appearing as characters, the evangelist narrator, or commentators, the soloists sing two main types of piece: arias, which are solo songs with newly written poetic texts and rich orchestral accompaniment, and recitatives, which are scriptural passages distinctive for their speech-like quality and secco, or dry, accompaniment. To highlight the differences between these forms, let's take a listen to a few examples from Part 1. In this aria, the bass sings with full voice and a flowing rhythm, accompanied by nearly the full orchestra. With the exception of a few ornamental pitches, the singer and players perform the music exactly as it is written. As we listen to the following recitative sung by the evangelist, listen for the difference in instrumentation and pay particular note to the rhythms of the singer and the players.
Zu der Zeit, dass ein Gebot von dem Kaiser Mosco ausging, was alle Welt erschöpfeten würde. Und jedermann ging, dass er sich schätzen ließe, ein jeglicher in seine Stadt.
We notice that instead of the full orchestra, the singer is supported only by the lute, cello, and double bass, playing short or dry chords. These instruments form the continuo group, which can be made up of nearly any combination of one or more bass instruments, such as the cello, double bass, or bassoon, along with a chordal instrument like the lute, organ, or harpsichord, depending on the availability of the instruments and the expressive decisions of the performers. Their dry manner of playing, called secco in Italian, is accomplished by shortening the accompanying rhythms in order to give the evangelist the freedom to shape the text in a natural, speech-like manner. Exactly how much to shorten each chord is worked out in rehearsal between the soloist, conductor, and players based on traditions and practices well documented since Bach's time. A second form of recitative, known as accompagnato, shares the biblical roots of secco recitative, but the inclusion of one or more non-continuo orchestral instruments necessitates a literal performance of the written rhythms. However, the singer is still free to ornament the melody as they would in a secco recitative. In the following accompagnato recitative, the alto and the continuo group are joined by two oboes d'amore. If the oratorio chorus is a child of the opera chorus, then the opera chorus owes its existence to the Greek chorus of antiquity. As such, oratorio choruses regularly switch from participants in the action, be they angels, shepherds, or wise men, to commentators on the events and emotions of the story. When the chorus represents the crowd, this is called a turba chorus, and the words uttered by the crowd are often direct quotations from the Bible, whereas commentary text is more frequently newly written poetry. In addition to these two formats in the opening chorus is the opening chorus, dramatic and virtuosic pieces which set the scene and introduce important themes and images, and also we have the chorale. Chorales are straightforward tunes meant for communal singing. They are a contribution of Martin Luther, who believed the congregations should be empowered to participate meaningfully in the worship service. To this end, chorales for a German audience were written in German and typically featured melodies with modest ranges and simple rhythms. Protestant hymns in all languages owe their lineage to German chorales. In the Christmas oratorio, as in Bach's Cantatas and Passions, the chorale setting serves as points of entry for the listener. The texts speak to the listener in their present time, inviting them to be participants in the devotional process. The tunes and texts would have been familiar to the attendees at the first Christmas oratorio service. Bach, known as the true master of chorale settings, adorns these well-known melodies with vocal harmonies and instrumental lines in incredible variety and combinations to bring out diverse meaning in the chorales. My colleagues will point out several of these special uses of chorales in the later videos in this series. We have now made reference to Bach's audience. Unlike contemporaneous oratorios meant for opera-going audiences, Bach's Christmas oratorio was written for liturgical use. It was not meant for one unified evening-long performance. Rather, the 6 sections were split amongst the Sundays and feast days of the Christmas season, beginning with Christmas Day. The 6 parts range in length from approximately 25 to 30 minutes, fitting in as a segment of the services on those 6 days. Thanks to the annotations written into the manuscript score, we know the date, time of day, and location of each of these services. This information provides us with a few details that deserve our special attention. Firstly, note that these performances alternate between the churches of St. Thomas and St. Nicholas. In a situation unimaginable to most church musicians and conductors today, Bach was responsible for the musical activities of multiple churches in Leipzig. This included not only the training of the choristers and the hiring of the instrumentalists, but also necessitated a nearly constant outpouring of new works. The other interesting point that this raises is that Bach shifted the order of the liturgy to craft a more cohesive narrative. To understand this, it's important to know that in the Lutheran Church, among others, specific Bible verses are assigned to each Sunday of the year, actually in a 3-year cycle, as well as to the feast days like Christmas and Epiphany. Because Sundays and feast days don't always come in the same order each year, some parts of the Christmas story can potentially shift slightly from year to year. To circumvent this narrative challenge, Bach codifies the order the sections are to appear. In so doing, he divides the story of the three wise men between parts 5 and 6, employing different musical affect and symbolism across the two sections, differences which will be highlighted in the later videos in this series. One of the ways Bach varies the musical affect to fit each part of the Christmas story is through his use of various instrumentation. One advantage of splitting the oratorio across 6 separate church services is that he can hire different combinations of instrumentalists for each portion without wasting the musician's time or the parish resources by having anyone sit around unused during the parts they're not playing. This allows him to match the instrumentation to the dramatic needs of each portion of the Christmas story, as well as to use the largest forces on the most prominent feast days. My colleagues will take a close look at instrumentation in their analyses of parts 4, 5, and 6. There's another, somewhat more practical reason Bach varied his instrumentation. To illustrate, let's listen to the following clip. Did this excerpt sound familiar? If you heard the distinctive timpani solo and familiar melodies and said it was the opening to part 1, you'd be partially correct. In actuality, the clip I played is from the opening to BWV 214, Tönet ihr Pauken, a secular cantata first performed in December 1733, an entire year before the performance of the Christmas Oratorio. Here, and at last count, 17 other times elsewhere throughout the Christmas Oratorio, Bach reused musical materials from earlier, often secular works, applying new texts to fit the story. This technique, called parody, has been prevalent throughout music history, but Bach is a particular master, as we'll see later in the video series. We are not quite certain of the sources of the new texts, but many scholars believe that under Bach's supervision, they were written by his frequent librettist, known as Picander. The instrumentations of the source works Bach borrowed are quite diverse, but they fit the character of each movement of the Christmas Oratorio so well that some wonder whether he may have composed the earlier works with this later Christmas parody in mind. In any event, Bach's careful planning and clever reuse of materials, coupled with his brilliant mastery of the diverse forms found in the work, have all coalesced into a stunning piece of musical drama. In its original context, split between 2 churches and spread across 12 days in the Christmas season of 1734, it's hard to say how many parishioners would have ever gotten to see the entire work performed. How lucky we are, nearly 300 years later, to be able to study this incredible piece as a whole. Thank you to the Minnesota Orchestra and Minnesota Chorale for 2 seasons worth of work putting on Johann Sebastian Bach's Christmas Oratorio. Please click through to the remaining videos in this series to gain insights into parts 4, 5, and 6 of Bach's Christmas Oratorio.